I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Tim McGraw, who stars as James Dutton in 1883. And Tim, it was funny. As I was watching this show, the first thing that comes to my mind is the authenticity that comes with a Taylor Sheridan project. And what is that like from an acting perspective? Does that provide its own challenges?
I don't think it provided challenges at all. I think it sort of, in his writing, not only in the dialogue, but the staging notes and the shooting notes and everything that he puts into the writing that he does. I think it just provides such a great roadmap for what you're supposed to do and what the character is and who you are. I mean, I found it the way he writes and the descriptions of the scenery very liberating as an actor. I think it gave me room to just learn the words and know the words. And if you knew the words, then you're put into a world that's been created that's so special and so perfect and so tonally right on the spot that you can't help it but deliver, because it's just all there for you.
Is Sheridan, with Yellowstone has become such kind of like a cultural phenomenon, and this has as well. What is it about his writing that you think has, kind of captured this kind of renaissance almost of the American Western?
Yeah, well, certainly I think it's, he's just so talented for one thing, but it's poetic in a lot of ways. It's not just some sort of dry commentary. I mean, even like I said before, even with the scene descriptions and with the camera descriptions and all the ancillary stuff that goes around the dialogue, it's just so poetic that it really creates a world that I even told Faith when we were reading the script that he's sort of drawn a roadmap to everybody that's involved with this project, down to the crew and the catering guys. They can read this and feel what this project's gonna be like, and I just think I think it's just he's got some magic that's going on right now, and who knows how long stuff like that lasts, but when the zeitgeist is right, the zeitgeist is right,
And your character in particular, I think, is so clearly written, and you have such like a clear path. When you first signed on to this project, what was it about this character that appealed to you?
Well, I like that he was a man of few words. that was the main thing. So I didn't have to say a whole lot, but I liked his stoicness. I loved his incredibly fierce love for his family, and how that was really his driving force in everything that he did. And I loved the backstory with the Civil War and PTSD in my mind that he probably suffered through before anybody knew what PTSD was. 3 years in a Union prison camp. And in my mind, I built up the version of James that probably didn't really want to be fighting in that war, but was sort of in an unwinnable situation and in a situation that he was morally conflicted with. And then coming out of the war and coming out of 3 years in prison, coming back home to Tennessee, and then leading into Reconstruction and all the things that happened after Reconstruction, I just felt like that James was sort of on a journey to find something pure. I think that the innocence and the pureness of his life had been wiped away. And then he had his daughter who he loved fiercely, and his wife who he believed in and knew that was the backbone of the family. And he had this little boy. I think that he was just searching for a place that was pure and unspoiled, and a place that he could outrun his demons, which we all know you can't. But I think that that's what he was looking for, just a place to start over and get out of the mess that he felt like that the world had put him in since the Civil War.
And the relationship, I think, between James and Margaret is also, again, so clearly, it seems to be kind of the through line here, is that everything is so clearly defined. How much conversation did you and Faith have about these characters, or did you kind of just want it to be kind of like a spontaneous thing?
We wanted it to be more spontaneous. We didn't have a lot of conversations about our character. One, we have three daughters. We're all grown, but we have three daughters, so we know what it's like to raise daughters, and even the rebelliousness of daughters, we know a little bit about. So we had that, and we have our relationship. We've been married for 25 years, so we know that the relationship that we had, we were bringing to the table. What we didn't want to do, and we knew that this was it's going to be a high bar for us, is going into these characters, and I'll always be forever thankful that Taylor stuck with us and really fought for us to be these characters. We knew it was a high bar to go in there and for people to see the screen and not see Tim and Faye. We knew that was going to be a challenge. So what we tried to do is we never ever ran our lines together as Margaret and James. The only time we read the script is when we would get scripts in, we would lay in bed and read scripts to each other all the way through, all the notes and everything. And then she would read one and I would read two, three, and so forth. But we never ran lines together because we wanted it to be, we knew that we would have our connection and we knew that we would have our chemistry because of our relationship. But we were so afraid to bring Tim and Faye into it that we wanted to keep it really fresh when we did our scenes.
And in many ways, I think the additional love story here is between James and his daughter.
Yeah.
And Isabel May is just this force of nature. And so how did you two work together in terms of, building that believable father-daughter relationship?
It was great. I mean, instantly we had a great connection together. And ironically, when we first showed up at Cowboy Camp and saw Isabel for the first time, other than in pictures and stuff, when we saw her in person for the first time, our jaw just about hit the floor because she and my middle daughter look so much alike. I mean, they practically could be doubles. So when we saw her, we were like, oh my gosh, she looks like our daughter. And so it was easy to start forming that relationship. And it was easy to really just jump into that sort of parental role with her and work together. And anytime we did scenes, I mean, I was working with my daughters in my mind. Just putting yourself in situations that you've been in your life that weren't the same as that, but situations that were tough situations with your own kids, and then looking at a girl who easily could have been one of my daughters. I mean, it just, and then with the writing that Taylor provided, and then the world that we were living in at the time, everything just felt magical. I mean, it just felt like it was right where it was supposed to be. And she was so fantastic. I mean, she's such a pro. I mean, she was 20 years old when we started. I think she turned 21 in the middle of shooting this project, and just so poised and so together and so professional. And she was a big help in a scene. If you got stuck someplace, you could just pay attention to what she was doing and she'd pull you out of it.
Did that, that kind of similarity to your own daughter, did that make some of those later scenes, especially in the last two episodes, did that create a challenge, or did that make it easier for you to access kind of those more emotional parts in those later scenes?
I think both. I think it was both. I think it's a challenge because as a parent in real life, you never want your mind to go places like that. You do everything because you don't want to project anything like that out into the ethos, you know what I mean? So you try your best not to have those thoughts, but every parent has those thoughts, and every parent, when you have kids, when you go to sleep at night, that's the last thing you think of. And when you wake up in the morning, that's the first thing you think of your kids, no matter how old you get or how old they get. So in that instance, it was tough because you didn't want to put your kid's face into the environment that you were trying to act in. On the other hand, being a dad of three daughters, and being in those situations on set, made it easy to tap into those feelings. So it was like tightrope walking. You know what I mean? Where you try not to think the worst, but you use it to try to get to the worst that you're shooting in the scene. And the hardest part too was James is so stoic, and he's always tries to check his emotions and everything that he does. So in a lot of the scenes, there would be times where, as an actor in the scene delivering lines, I would get emotional, and I would have to check myself and really, really, really work to not be emotional. So show restraint, which is the hardest thing to do when you're in an emotional state, when you're delivering an emotional line in an emotional scene, and still not try to be emotional, but still have it show and bubble and simmer underneath the subtext, be there for everybody else to see.
And this really is, in many ways, I think, one of the biggest, certainly dramatic parts that you've ever had in your career. Were you intimidated at all by the scope of this thing, or did you just kind of embrace the challenge of it?
I think I just embraced the challenge of it. I grew up riding, so I was very comfortable on horseback. So that part never bothered me at all. Early on, we were fortunate enough to do those flashback episodes in Yellowstone, which really gave me an opportunity to discover James. So once I knew that I had James, and then the biggest, lucky charm that I had was having my wife on set with me and her playing Margaret. I mean, that there was a level of comfortability there that would be hard to describe. That I don't know that I would have been as confident and as relaxed and as ready to take this on if I hadn't had her beside me.
And then at the same time, you have, again, the quintessential Western man in Sam Elliott,
Yeah.
who is just phenomenal in this. What was that working relationship like? Because, I mean, there is you two are kind of at odds at many points in the series, but then there's this ultimate kind of respect that you two have. I think of the scene where he just kind of you just kind of put your hand on his knee and he puts his hand on yours, and then that's it.
Yeah.
There's so much communicated there.
Absolutely. And he was incredible to work with. One of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life. I have an Uncle Hank who's 79 years old, who actually they could pass for twin brothers. So when I walked in and saw Sam, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my Uncle Hank. So we had an instantly good relationship. But I also think, he didn't know anything about me, not much about my acting, not much about my music. So I think our relationship personally sort of developed the same way that James and Shay's relationship developed on set and on camera, learning about each other and figuring it. I mean, certainly with mutual respect right from the beginning, but also like, let's from my point of view, I was looking at Sam like he's looking at me like, let's see what this guy can do. And I'm like, I want to soak up everything I can from Sam and learn from him. So he's will always and will forevermore be a hero of mine, not only as an actor, but personally. He's just one of the greatest men I've met in my career.
Does, coming from music, you've had such a long, career in music, and you've made
You're
these.
Trying to say I'm old, right?
No, I would never say that. I would never say that. Let's say seasoned. Let's say seasoned.
There you go. I like seasoned better. Tenderized.
Aged like a fine wine. So does the transition, is there kind of a seamless transition between music and acting, or was that something did that happen natural, or was it like something that you've actively really tried to work at over the course of your career?
No, I always loved movies, and I always thought that it'd be fun to act. I'd done a few plays in high school and stuff like that, like everybody has. But I sort of avoided it for a long time. My career was going great. Music was going great, and in my mind, I thought right off the bat, once you start having success, then they start offering stunt roles to you, stunt casting, where you show up and they see your face, and just to sell a few tickets or something like that. And so those things started happening. And my biggest fear was, being a musician and being on stage is all about sort of just keeping your cool together. And the worst thing you can do is go try to do something else in the middle of trying to build this career and trying to make this career successful, to try to go do something else and really be bad at it. you can really screw up your career. So I spent a long time avoiding it just because, I just didn't want to mess up what I loved and what I had going and what was really working for me and what I was really enjoying. But I was getting scripts in, and then one night I had a little time on my hands, and I went to my office, and there was 4 or 5 scripts laying there, and Friday Night Lights was one of them. And I picked up the script and started reading it, and I called Kelly immediately, who works for me, one of my managers, and said, I think I found something, and I think she actually is the one that told me to pick it up and read it. So I think I found a guy I can play. And so we started talking to Pete Berg about Friday Night Lights and ended up getting a part. And that was really sort of the movie that sort of bit me and got me sort of, but I'll have to say, it's not, music is my first love. And I hesitate to say this. I love playing scenes and I love working with other actors. I don't love the waiting around and the sitting in the trailer and the waiting for 2 hours for them to light something or waiting for the cameras to get set up. I don't like that, but I do love the actual working in a scene while the cameras are rolling with other actors. There's nothing quite like that.
So with this series, we were talking before that you're back on tour, and so what kind of project do you think would bring you back to the screen?
Well, I mean, it's not unlike when you're recording an album. I write for every album, but I don't always record stuff that I write because I always want the content and the music to win. The songs have to win. So for me, it's this. I approach it the same way with scripts. It's got to be a script that comes to me, and then it sort of viscerally hits me and strikes a chord in me. That has to happen first. So the material has to be there first and foremost. Secondly, it's got to work out in my schedule where the timing's right to when they want to shoot it and when I'm not working and when something else is not going on in my life. That has to work out. And thirdly, they got to want me for the part. They might have 5 guys they want for the part, and maybe I don't fit. But so a lot of factors have to come together in a order for me to be able to go do a project. But firstly, it's got to be the material.
I have to ask this question. How soon after you finished shooting did the beard come off?
I wrapped at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and by 4:15, it was shaved off. I could not wait. I was so tired of it. And the worst part about it was, the beard was a pain in the ass because it just drove you crazy. But it was keeping it dyed the entire time because my beard is completely white. Anybody that knows me knows mine's all white. So having that thing on and having to constantly go in and have it dyed like every other day was just such a hassle. I was glad to get rid of that. I think my wife kind of liked it a little bit, but I was glad to get rid of it.
What is it? The spouses always like it, and it drives us nuts.
I know. I like it for a little while, but then I'm ready to get rid of it. It's just one of those things that's just, I don't know. It just made me feel unkept for a long time, which
so appropriate.
We were unkept for a long time. I think I'm still finding dirt on me from places that I didn't know you could get dirt.
Oh God! And you thought the beach was the only place where that happened?
Right, exactly.
Well, Tim, congratulations. I mean, the whole series is just so spectacular, and I think it's just such a work of art on every level. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders throughout the season. Tim McGraw, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Good talking.